Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy Newcomb, President and CEO of Newcomb Global, here on behalf of the Voices Conference to share with you some news and views from some fantastic women I've had the pleasure of working with here in ASEAN. Special shout out to Deanna Kosaraju, who's not only produced the conference, but managed to have 4 nations up at once. We actually have a fifth presenter who's kindly waiting in the wings while I moderate. So thank you so much for being here. Allow me to introduce quickly the two that are here and the other two that will be with us shortly. We have with us today Jennifer Kinney, who is in at least my upper right corner, hopefully yours as well. Jennifer has recently moved to Indonesia after 20 years being in Silicon Valley as a CIO and senior consultant. She's on the board of Global Women's Leadership Network and is actually in China at the moment, despite her speaking about Indonesia today, giving a keynote address to the Hilton Group. We also have Alice Soriano, who is representing her country of the Philippines. She is the CEO and founder of Pinoy Travel, a regional service that allows you to reserve seats on buses and ferries going around. And when you hear the geography about the Philippines, that will be even more meaningful. I don't think Haslina is up at the moment, and also Isa. We are working with some technical challenges, but allow me to tell you a little bit about them anyway. Naraja Shamsul Baharin is representing Malaysia today, and she is the managing director of MadCat World, a multimedia company with over 980,000 downloads in 201 countries. She received an EE degree from the University of Michigan. She is the founder of WINA, and she is also the Global Tech Women first representative from Malaysia. I had the pleasure of working with Naraisa when I had the privilege of working with the State Department last year, training women entrepreneurs in Malaysia and Brunei. And that is, in fact, also how I met our final speaker, Haslina Taib, Managing Director and CEO of BAG Networks, a management and information technology firm between Accenture and the Brunei government. We look forward to sharing our perceptions and look forward to hearing yours as well as we continue. And thank you for being patient with our technical challenges. We're also eager to speak with you, and hopefully our platform will support that. Deanna, how would you like to proceed from here? That would be great. Thank you. You can actually move it around this deck in order for your maximum convenience on the screen, and you have to actually manually advance the slides yourself. So hopefully we will hear from our other two panelists shortly. I'll just give a very quick wrap up of ASEAN Overview, which is the acronym for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Founded in 1967 with a land area of 4.4 million kilometers, 3% of the total land area of Earth. It was initially founded with Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Brunei, and subsequently included Cambodia, Myanmar, also known as Burma, and Vietnam. The population most recently was estimated at 612 million, and the GDP has grown to almost 2.4 trillion, as estimates in 2013 indicate. Some of this has come forward as the U.S. government is proactively seeking a trade agreement known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And we will move on now to the more personal views of our speakers. Okay, I guess, Jennifer, since Isa's not available, would you like to step forward at this time and talk a little bit about Indonesia?
Certainly, yeah. So I'm obviously not Indonesian. I have been in Indonesia now for almost a year, and it's a fascinating, fascinating country. It is very much an emerging technology market with a vast opportunity. There are over 250 million people in Indonesia. Very, very interesting in that it is logistically very challenging. There are 17,000 islands that make up Indonesia. As I said, 252 million people, so it's the fourth most populous country in the world. Their GDP, when I started trying to understand it relative to countries I'm used to, so to Ireland and to the US, their GDP is 3,510 per capita, so that's number 121 ranked in the world. The US, just for reference, is number 4, and Ireland, which I'm familiar with, is number 14. So a lot of work to do to sort of leverage the wealth there and spread the wealth. It was one of the founding members of ASEAN, so very, very important in terms of thought leadership in the region, and continues to grow and expand.
Yeah. What should I do? And I've tried to bring Hasina online. Thanks for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have our speakers here, and if we don't have Jennifer soon, Al will ask you to step up about the Philippines. Well, why don't we do that? Why don't you just go ahead and start? We'll forward to the slides a little bit, and why don't you talk a little bit about your business and the Philippines as we've previously addressed, and we'll let other people come back and catch up.
Okay.
Casalina, hi.
Well, the system
We're on the
says,
Philippines.
yes. Philippines is, well, we have a population of about 100 million people and still growing. About 10-12% of that is actually overseas working. We do export labor in terms of engineering and care. We have a lot of nurses in other countries. That's one of the biggest industry that we have. There are about 19 dialects or languages in the Philippines. So we are a population that's very comfortable speaking multi languages. English actually is our second language. When you come to the Philippines, everybody speaks English. It's a very young population, the average age of 25. So we are English speaking country. So that actually makes us a very good location for outsourcing. If you call Apple or AT&T, yeah, there's a very high chance that you're actually talking to a person who's located in the Philippines. So that's one of the biggest industries that we have at the moment. Software development is also one of the developing industries and talents that we have. Again, that's part of the outsourcing. We have a lot of people here being part of Google, Apple development. So that's a growing industry in terms of technology. We have about 7,000 islands here, so you can imagine how beautiful the underwater scenery. Scuba diving, we're a major destination for scuba diving. We have one of the best beaches in the world. So tourism is also huge here. As I mentioned earlier, we have different languages or dialects. So if you go to my second slide, this shows that we are a very digital-oriented population. We're always in the top 10 of the social media scenes. We're like, I think we have the number 1 or number 2 country with the highest number of time spent on Facebook. So that says a lot about the kind of people. Yeah, because this is a very young environment. We are a very family oriented culture. So especially for women are actually expected to, if someone has to stay at home and if someone has to take care of the kids, it's usually the mother who will have to give up her career and take care of the kids and let the husband go out and pursue a career. That's one of the reasons why there are very few women in technology industry, especially because of this prioritization, which is not exactly so bad. But what happens normally, like in my case, although I've been working all my life, um, I had to take a back seat whenever possible if my family demands me to be at home. So at some point in my career, I actually had to give up my corporate life and be an entrepreneur, so I have more time with the family. Um, However, what I noticed from other women is that once the kids go to college or once they're on their own, the female is normally left with nothing to do anymore. So one of the advocacies that I have is actually helping women after a corporate career do something
She just keeps sitting and she'll come in for a minute and
fruitful
then she goes out.
and contribute more to the industry. So that's it for the Philippines.
Yeah, it's pretty much O that's the only one who's able to sustain the connection. Jennifer's not answering. I did what you suggested. You have someone at 9 o'clock? Well, oh, thank you so much. That's really fascinating. And since it's just the two of us right now while we work through some technical challenges, let's just have an unofficial moment about some of the things we would normally talk about at the end of the panel time. Let's talk a little bit about, your comments about women in the family and priorities are really interesting. And I wouldn't say unique to the Philippines, but maybe the amount of emphasis from what little I've learned from you so far is much higher priority and kind of, I guess I'd call it more of an exclusive level. Are there women's professional groups that you have become a part of? As I mentioned, I met Haslina because she's the leader of a group in Brunei, and Isa was the leader of a group for a very long time and actually is now in the ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network, which much I might want to talk to you about offline. Are there women's groups in the Philippines that you have found particularly supportive to your business?
You've been breaking, but the way I understand your question is, am I involved in some women organizations here in the Philippines? The answer is yes. I've actually gotten a lot of invitations to speak to women organization. I will be featured in a in a women-centric magazine. Basically because they want me to share my experiences transitioning from corporate to entrepreneurship. So there's one thing that I saw about women. I'm 50 years old, and there's something I saw about women who's been in corporate and wanting to transition into startups or to businesses is that we tend to be very good in service-oriented businesses. Mainly because we've been mothers all our lives, so we know how to take care of people, and it tends to be very genuine that we do want to help people. My entrepreneur is involved in booking online and booking transportation, but we end up helping people with other stuff that they need in terms of their vacation or transportation, and it's one thing that they appreciate from us, maybe because they can feel that when we do try to help them, it is very genuine. That's one thing unique about, I guess, women of a more mature age compared to people who are probably in their early 20s, whose probably priority is just to get things done rather than putting some heart into what they're doing.
Thank you, Al. That's so interesting. I was about to switch to Haslina talking about Brunei, but I think what I'll do instead is Isa, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to read your slides for right now, and then we'll go back and see if we can get enough folks. Jennifer, unfortunately, Jennifer Kinney, who was speaking about Indonesia, has an entirely frozen laptop, so I'm afraid we're going to say goodbye to Jennifer for now. But let me go ahead and talk about Isa's cool slides, and hopefully she will be back in a moment. So if we go to slide 3 of 13, and thanks again, Al. We'll look forward to hearing more in a little bit from you. So Malaysia, you can see here that she has such impressive figures. So I'll let you look at those directly. Isa, is that you? Almost. Almost. So on slide 3, you can see a little bit about Malaysia and the population and the ethnicity down in the right-hand corner. I'll let you digest that for just a moment. And like Ao, she has a cool slide about the digital world there. 30 million involved, 20 million in segment, etc. So Malaysia is a highly skilled country. I had the pleasure of visiting 4 very different areas and working with entrepreneurs that were completely focused in a different way in 4 of the different states last year, as I mentioned. And Isa's slides give us a wonderful overview of that. Her final slide, which is 5 of 13, is the women in STEM. And of course, that's the basis of our talk and the focus of our conference. So if you look there, you can see in schools, universities, workforce, professionals, still moving forward. And I really hope that we'll get a chance to talk to Isa more about that. And Haslina is not quite there right now. So I think what I'll do is read Haslina's slides, and then as we get people back online, for a start, I'll get off pretty soon, and then we'll try and have everybody online that can be there from the panel. We've had the pleasure of hearing about the Philippines. Did you get a chance to talk about this, Al, enough? You implied it, but I don't know if we actually looked at the slide and went over things. The huge opportunity for older women might be really refreshing to those of us in Silicon Valley, where age is something we're quite conscious of. Al, did you want to talk more?
Oh, sorry, it's been very choppy. So is that directed to me?
Yes, thank you. I'm directing that to you about what you said about a huge opportunity for older women. Slide 10 of the deck. We talked a little bit about the family role and how much of a priority that is. And so in a way, when women are older in the Philippines, you have indicated fewer family obligations leave actually more freedom to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities, correct?
Sorry, Maya, you were very choppy, but I think you said something like the challenges in becoming entrepreneurs. Is that it?
I was talking about older women. Slide number 10.
Yeah, Maya, I think I lost you.
Okay. Well, we'll just go on. Haslina, are you ready to talk about Brunei Darussalam? Haslina? Okay, Haslina, I'm going to read your slides, and hopefully we will be able to hear you in the question and answer period, because I can't cover for that. And also you can comment here. I'll show you, and I can read your comments. So Brunei is one of the smaller countries, and part of why I really was excited to have Haslina comment today was in order to give a little bit of an understanding about one of the nations that's the least known. Of course, we could not feature all 10 of the ASEAN countries today, and it was so hard to choose. But Brunei is quite unique in a number of ways, and there's Haslina, and I hope she'll be able to address some of those. On a basic level, the population, as you can see here in slide 11 of 13, the age group of 25 to 54 is 24%. Not too different, slightly skewed higher from what Ao talked about, the average age in the Philippines being 25. The total female population estimated at 50%. And the size only 5,770 kilometers. The internet usage is at 60%, but I think we'd have to quabble with some folks over there today about the quality level. But there's actually quite a high usage, as you can see. And an average of 4.5 mobile phones in the home seems remarkably high. So I look forward to hearing more from Haslina about that. Sounds like one in every room almost. Connectivity, as we were starting to discuss, is cross-border e-commerce, regional and surrounding connectivity also. And in her second slide, Haslina talks about the high level of unemployment here, which is kind of staggering, 58.7% unemployed females. Most of our listeners today are probably quite familiar with the Sultanate of Brunei and the fairly opulent level that is depicted in the media about the gorgeous affluence in Brunei, but the truth is there are quite a lot of people, it would seem to be here, that are not working. So I'm grateful to her for ferreting out the broader view for us. For women in STEM, this is actually a typo. I'm sorry, it happened in the translation. Women in STEM tertiary education, so college level, peaked in 2010 for STEM and has declined in 2012 steadily ever since. So that should be a really interesting conversation point. I'm hoping we can engage Haslina further. Why STEM, raised itself so high as the bubble and the internet, traversed around the world and then suddenly started to peak off at a time when most of us are working to encourage a further penetration here. That's pretty interesting. We'll go over to the far right where Haslina talks about startups are considered there as micro businesses. I have to say, when I was training in Brunei, I was quite overwhelmed by the amount of franchises and franchisees, KFC being a large one, and then a number of local ones that are less expensive and a little bit more to the Muslim tastes and the halal diets, etc. So all of these are grouped in what's called micro businesses, and of those, 60% use social media, and 40% of those are using pretty much consumer goods, food, jewelry, garments, handbags, and services. So not a lot of business to business. I'm sure it makes her company, Bag Networks, all the more in demand because obviously that's a hardcore business solution. So with that, we're pleased to have Jennifer back. Jennifer, did you want to say anything further about Indonesia while we have you? Thank you for coming back.
I have no idea where I cut off. Everything just froze. So where
I'll
did
go
we
back
get
to your
to?
slides. I'll go. Your first one, I think we finished pretty well. That you were just saying 1,700 islands when you disappeared onto one of them, except that you're in China. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about the discrimination piece in the culture. Most of the culture, high percentage of Muslim population, not too surprising, but you had some interesting data about discrimination.
Yeah, well, so that data is actually coming from an organization that is an international organization whose website I can't get to from China, so I can't give you the specifics on that. But I can certainly give you the information that I polled, which was to say that Indonesia has medium levels of discrimination against women in social institutions, lower discrimination in restricted access to resources and assets, and higher discrimination in discriminatory family code. So a lot of sort of unevenness in how women are treated, and I think a lot of sort of emerging understanding of exactly what women's role in society is. So you have everything from women entrepreneurs who are successful in getting funding from Singapore and various other Asian countries, and also from the US, along with women who are, it's difficult for me there to have a bank account. So a lot of sort of just mismatched things, and I think a lot of progress to be made.
Wow. And so there, meaning Indonesia, it's difficult for you as a woman to have a bank account.
I cannot have a bank account without my husband's
Oh
approval.
my gosh.
Oh,
Wow.
and I don't suppose you get the same treatment on the reverse.
No, 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 absolutely not. I would outright forbid it if that was the case.
Interesting. Yeah, that's been an interesting theme. I think we could, I've heard several stories from different parts of Africa. It's an interesting book topic, I think. Not that I know you're working on one on female leadership, it's a feminine leadership, it's a different scenario, but I think there are certain threads that we
Yeah,
could follow worldwide that would be fascinating, and that being regrettably one of them. Well, was there
yeah,
anything else you
yeah.
wanted to mention? I'll go over to your next slide. This was a little bit more about connectivity, which is ironic today. And then maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about the foreign direct investment from Korea, Japan, China, and Singapore. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So there's a lot of people paying attention to Indonesia because it's such a huge population, and such a an interesting population in terms of their commitment to be part of the world, commercial arena. I found a fantastic article from one of their own venture capitalists, a guy called Andy Bodiman, who's from IDEO Source Venture Capital. And he's basically put forward building blocks for furthering Indonesia's startup ecosystem. They have taken some of the learning from Singapore and from Taiwan, and some of the government ministers are working on creating private sector government partnerships, which potentially very, very powerful and effective in making that happen. And they're also getting a fair amount of, for the smaller organizations, I think, investment coming from Singapore, and then for some of the larger ones coming from Korea, Japan, the US, and then also some of the Indonesian conglomerates are doing work similar to a lot of what the US ones did, which was they're doing internal in-house funding of startups. So that's also pretty exciting because there's a huge young population, very, very, a lot of them very savvy, very tech savvy, and very committed to starting businesses.
Wow. Well, what's your impression just from a mad dash, Silicon Valley to Indonesia in 9 months or less, 10 months or less? Do you have some comparative remarks about women in STEM thus far that, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but are there a couple of light observations you might
No,
like to
no,
offer?
that's fine. That's fine. I have not met that many women in STEM, unfortunately. Some of it is because I have been working for the last year to try and start a business and get a work permit, which I have not been successful in doing. So the process is inordinately difficult.
Mm.
Versus, when I'm in Silicon Valley, I get online, I register a company, and I start the next day. So it's taken me over a year and I have not been successful. So maybe if I was Indonesian national, it might be easier, but I think there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of facilitating people starting businesses and being able to, bring in international investment and create networks around the world, exactly as we're doing here. But I think that's actually it's actually extremely difficult.
Well, I'm wishing you well, and hopefully this Hilton keynote will be the start of a new era for you in that regard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's in China, though. It's easier to do business here.
Ah, right, right. Yeah, for better or worse, they've been used to internationalization of some kind or another for a really long time. Maybe that's
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah,
We can chat offline
yeah,
about
it is
embassy
helpful.
help and things like that if you'd like. So I am actually,
Thank you.
thank you, Heslina, for your patience. And pardon? Yeah, thanks. I see that. I'm going to take myself off and have Haslina speak right now to us about Brunei. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay. Hi guys, sorry. Oh, that's a bit loud. I've been putting it on mute. Okay, I'm gonna try this because there's a lag. I'm not really sure whether Lucy, you have covered some of my slide. Just to actually give, for the sake of completion, I think majority of you know where Brunei is. I have been in Brunei for 8 years.
Hi, I'm sorry Haslina's had a bit of a connectivity problem, and so we're really fortunate that Isa has been able to be on, and I'm sorry that she um, can't actually speak for herself, but she wanted, first of all, in addition to the amazing slides she put together, she wanted me to be sure to mention that there are quite a number of leading women entrepreneurs in the engineering industry, building airplane parts, supplying oils and lubricants, oil and gas. In fact, the night I met Isa, we also had dinner with one of her colleagues who's doing amazing things in the petroleum industry at a startup level. So it's really impressive, and I'm sorry we're having a hard time hearing Isa right now, but she is available for question and answers, and so I hope we'll get to do that further. And I invite you to download the deck, which has her wonderful information. So, are you on Wi-Fi, Isa? I don't know if she can hear me. Okay. Uh, okay. Um, Anyway, so why don't we go to the question and answer period? Is there anyone here? Maybe Ching would like to ask some questions. Not right now. Um, so would anyone like to ask a question? You can type that in the chat box. I'm not really seeing anything. Okay, well, I'm going to ask another question then. We were talking about women's groups. And Jennifer, it's a little bit early for you in Indonesia, but I wondered if by any chance you have come across any professional women's groups, not exactly GWLN, but if there's any kind of professional group that you've found to be helpful to you, especially with the challenges you've mentioned, by the way, anything in Jakarta that has pulled your interest?
There are professional women's groups, of most of them that I found at the moment are expat women's groups, and they're
Right.
fantastic. They're great. There is a working expat women's group and non-working one as well. I'm also in the process of trying to connect with some Indonesian feminists. I have found a couple of them, slowly making inroads and trying to find out where they're all hanging out. Slowly working that process. I mean, there's some absolutely fantastic women there. It's just they're not quite as they're not quite as far down the road in terms of organizing themselves as I'm used to. And I now appreciate what an enormous luxury it is.
Yeah, we actually have a plethora here in Silicon Valley. It's really hard to choose and select. And when I go overseas, I'm reminded of what a first world problem that is and how lucky I am. And
Yeah,
it sounds like you might have the
yeah.
opportunity to start one. And so while I let you ponder that idea, Isa, if you would like to jot down a few notes in the chat screen about WINA, I'd like to read that for you now. So if you can do that while I'm asking Jennifer about Indonesia, that would be great. So Jennifer, do you think you might start a group yourself?
I think I can't do anything like that until I get the work permit issue
Oh,
sorted out.
fair enough.
It's not even possible to do pro bono work without a work permit.
Wow.
So yeah, so my hands are a little bit tied at the moment, which is why I'm sitting in Beijing at the moment. Yeah, it's yeah, there's opportunity there, shall we say.
More than, from the sound of it. I went through something similar overseas. It was very challenging, and but it was worth it, and I'm sure it will be for you. And like
Where were you?
South Africa, and
Oh, okay.
and it was very interesting because it was at a time of regime change, which has been protracted. And so, to their credit, it was very hard to, even though I'd actually been headhunted to go work there in subsequent times. Um, there wasn't the agility to shift everything at once, which is basically what the fall of apartheid and the election of Nelson Mandela was. So certain things like immigration rules were lagging behind, prison cells and electricity. And so as a result, I was treated the same as someone who crawled over the Mozambique border, much like the situation we have on occasion with Mexico and California. And, there's a level of, validity to that and even an appropriateness to that, but it really wasn't the same in terms of why I'd been recruited to be there. So it was challenging, and I feel for you in many respects. But I'm sure you have so much to give there. It's just a question of finding the path, even if it's not straightforward.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not straightforward, but the people are fantastic. There's a lot of change underfoot, and it's a matter of priorities, and I fully understand that.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book while I get Isa to tell us a few more minutes about WINA? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book that's pending?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's actually focused on feminine leadership. I'm calling the book Name It and Own It at the moment, because it's very, very much the idea that all of our distinctions around what is considered to be effective and powerful leadership come from the masculine, the interpretation of how the masculine energy shows up in the world. And it's time for us to start identifying how our own feminine energy shows up. I mean, some of us have a lot of masculine as well, but how our own feminine energy shows up, and really beginning to identify what that is, put distinctions around it, name it, weave it into all of the assessment, review, and evaluation processes in companies, to the point where we will actually be much more appreciated and welcomed and understood in terms of what we're bringing to the table. So I presented some of the ideas for pretty much the first time in Shanghai yesterday, and a lot of people, particularly a lot of the younger women, were just excited. It was like somebody saw them for the first time. So that was pretty cool. It felt really good. And I think if we can affect some sort of change like that, to where younger women don't have to go through the day-to-day putting on the armor and going to battle that we've had to do, then it will have been worthwhile. So that's what I'm hoping to have an impact on.
That's wonderful. I'm so excited. Well, I hope we'll have an update about that at a later time. And like I said, it's clear you have a vision and a mission there, so to speak, and look forward to seeing how the path gets carved out so you can move ahead. So Isa was able to share, of course, Isa was able to share a little bit about WINA, the wonderful organization that I had the privilege of working with last May, where I met Nariza. And she said that WINA, which I believe she was the leader for 7 years, is really at the core of, I apologize, my reading isn't as good as, about as good as some of the internet tonight, for support, especially around support of each other's businesses. And I have to say, I was very impressed with the level of support and the kind of unconditional, I would say, support. There were a lot of women in the same businesses, some tech entrepreneurs, a lot of personal care entrepreneurs, for lack of a better umbrella, oils and foods and all interesting kinds of things. And Isa herself has been a real champion of content in Islam. Of course, Malaysia has a large Muslim population, and Weena is actually, I'm really sorry that she can't speak to this. It's the leading cultures organization for women entrepreneurs, if that makes sense. So I hope that we'll get her back another time to speak more about it. She says that she's also able through Weena to provide the sisterhood that women entrepreneurs find uplifting. And as you heard from her bio, she certainly is indefatigable in terms of her own technical background. Her company, in addition to apps development, manages CSR programs for a number of tech companies. And she does a great program with children in the more rural areas. And she's saying that in addition to the Weena support, half of the members work from home or run a one-person business. That's really what I was circling around earlier, where they do a networking session and they get to connect with like-minded and meet like-minded people. And I think that's something women entrepreneurs share around the world. Is it's so easy for us to be head down in our projects and our deliverables that we can get kind of isolated. And whether we miss out on a special opportunity or just get a chance to share ideas with one another, we get that chance through organizations like Weena. Thank you, Isa, and thanks for all your leadership there. I promise we will have another session of some kind where your voice is heard directly. So we're looking at about 8:48. We have a few more minutes for questions. We seem to have lost O and Heslina. Jennifer, thank you for being here. And I'm just wondering if there's any other questions. Okay, well, let's see. We have a few people shifting here, I guess. Let's see if we can get her. Should I get off? I'm happy to get off if that would help Heslina come on. Okay. So, O, thank you for coming back. And we've already talked about women's groups in the Philippines and so forth. And Jennifer, look, you heard, oh, when you turned from, you also have an engineering background like Isa and a number of other women that we've spoken about tonight. When you pivoted to be an entrepreneur, I know that that was a challenge for you because I've read your information, but would you like to share a little bit about that decision-making process? What made you take the risk to go from, a solid technical job for a big company to jump out on your own and do this whole new category? Not only was it a shift for your career, but you were creating a whole new category. How did that go for you? What was the process for that?
Well, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. The problem is that whenever I think about losing my fixed monthly salary, I get scared. So, but I knew that at some point, especially in the technology business, the older you get, and if you're a woman, at some point in time, I know I will have to leave the corporate world. And more men were being hired, younger men were being hired. So I thought that, okay, at some point, these people are going to ease me off. So I said, okay, I'm not going to wait for that. I think this is the right time to be an entrepreneur, which is what I've always wanted anyway. And then I also noticed that recently there's a very high activity of startup programs in the Philippines. There's a lot of investors coming in. There's a lot of startup incubation programs that were being built. So what I actually did is I joined the competition. Okay, before I jumped off my corporate world, I joined the competition, and I told myself, if I'm gonna win, then maybe that's the sign for me to move on to something new. And I won. So I won in a startup competition. I was given funding to create my startup. So I said, okay, this is now the right time to do this. And fortunately, my husband is well, he has his own career. So I said, okay, I'm gonna lose my salary. So my husband was more than willing to take over to be the sole provider for the family. So I said, okay, I think I'm gonna do this. And one thing I noticed though is I'm probably, in the startup community, I'm probably uh, the only female of this age that are there. So the people I'm normally with are like people half my age, and majority of them are men. So I took that as an opportunity to like to differentiate myself. So when I get into organizations, the way I talk, the way I speak is different from everyone else, maybe because of my previous corporate life. So I take advantage of those situations, and it's been, I think it's been good for my startup so far. People don't see me as a startup. When people talk to me, they see me as a regular business. Although my company is pretty small, but I guess it's the way I carry the company that people take me more seriously than the others. So that's an advantage. So far, things have been good. We're growing really really fast, and and I think it's all because of my past experience as corporate. So it actually makes me believe that the best people to be leaders of startups and the best people to be entrepreneurs are people who've had experience in the corporate world, because the discipline is there, the network obviously is there, and I think being a woman gives the things that we do, it gives more passion, it gives more heart. We are more sincere. So it's been good for me so far. So I'm hoping to be able to expand the business in the region. We by going outside the Philippines. So that's the dream right now. So I hope we become successful.
Things that we really like to know about and people don't usually choose to share. So thank you for being so generous with your information and point of view. We're getting ready to wrap up, and I just wondered, Jennifer, did you have any last words? Or Heslina or Isa, if you'd like to type any last words to me, I'm happy to read them before we say goodbye to our wonderful audience.
For me, I think building out the entrepreneurial ecosystem is so important, and I think that the networks of women are just invaluable. I certainly found that when I was in Silicon Valley. I look for it everywhere I go, and I think that's an integral part of the ecosystem, and to some extent an unrecognized part of the ecosystem in most countries, including the US. So I think that, for me, any work I can do to help women with building out their entrepreneurial networks, I am delighted to help, and just think that it's incredibly valuable, and the work that you're doing here is incredibly valuable too. So
thank you, Jennifer. I really hope that if at minimum the 4 of us and 5 of us start to network in a different way together and hold the space for others to do that through here, that alone, despite our challenges, for which I thank everyone's patience for, that alone will have been a wonderful opportunity. I just want to read a couple of comments from Isa and Nariza before we sign off. Nariza says, I hope we can really enable women across the globe to network online. And obviously this would be what we're doing today as a start. And Heslina said that we must get more women in business online, more e-commerce, more women businesses. I am doing cross-border e-commerce for the area. And Isa says, I would like to meet these women who are online. One way I've done that is through the Sherry Blair Foundation. Yes, I'm sorry that we didn't have time to talk about mentoring programs. In addition to professional associations, there are many. I indirectly came into contact with Nariza and with Heslina through the Tech Women program of the State Department. Heslina has a fantastic organization involvement in what's called eBunda. And if you can see on this line, it's and to meet other women online e-commerce in their community. So with that, I hope that you will all join the Global Tech Women Facebook group, www.facebook.com/groups Global Tech Women. If you have any problems, let me know. It's my favorite Facebook group of all. And as I said, Nariza's one of our global leaders. So I will turn this back over to Deanna with thanks to everyone who participated and worked hard to make this as successful as we could. And hopefully the slide deck fills in some of the gaps we couldn't provide for you tonight. I look forward to being in touch with all of you, and thank you for the wonderful work you're doing to help us all thrive and grow as women entrepreneurs. Thank you. Good night.